Hey everyone, this is Chad with Stellarbot Guitar, and this is Guitar Module 1.0. In this video, I'm going to assume that you have not had any experience with music whatsoever, and we are going to talk about some of the super introductory stuff. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the building blocks of music, kind of how music starts from the little pieces that get put together to make the bigger pieces that turns into awesome music later on. So At the square one, we start with single notes. A single note is just a pitch measured in hertz, which is cycles per second, like sound waves hitting your eardrum per second. It's kind of sciencey. When we have a note that goes to another note, like that, whether you play them separately or at the same time, we call that an interval, or the distance from one note to the next. When you add a third note, then all of a sudden we have a chord, and a chord, we have lots of different chords, and guitar players use chords a lot. So we'll be talking about chords. So an example of a chord would be like that would be a chord. And then when you take multiple chords and you string them together, that's what we call a chord progression, and that's what we use to make music. So kind of like you just heard at the beginning of that video. Example of a chord progression. So the next thing is the musical alphabet. So every note that we play is named for a letter in the alphabet, and if we start with A, we actually play A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we land back at A because it ends up being the same note, kind of like this. If I called this one A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that'd be the same note as the first one. So we don't actually have H in the musical alphabet. It starts at A, ends at G, and then we're done. So that is the musical alphabet. And then in between those notes, we have other notes that we call the sharp notes and the flat notes. And those would be black keys on piano. So piano is actually a little bit easier visual layout of the notes than guitar. And so what we can have is, for example, this note on the third fret, or the third space, and we'll get to frets in a second. This would be the note G, and then 2 frets over, I have the note A, and then in between those, I would have what's called G sharp or A flat, which would be a black key on piano. So a little bit more on that later. All right, so the next thing is the standard tuning of guitar. Each string on a guitar is tuned to a specific note, and I don't know who decided what notes they would be tuned to, but somebody came up with E, A, D, G, B, E. So the bottom note and the top, or the bottom string and the top string are the same note, just one's low and one's high, and then the ones in between. And I use a mnemonic sentence or a mnemonic device to help me remember the names of those strings, and you can come up with whatever you want, but I came up with Evan always does good before eating. Evan always does good before eating. So that's E, A, D, G, B, E. So now that we know we've got a starting note or a fixed pitch, we can use what we know to help us find any note on the guitar. Now they all look the same, whereas on piano they're black keys and white keys. But what we can do is we can say, if I know that this note is E, then I can go forward from there. Now there are 2 spots on the piano, if you look at a piano, where there is no black key in between the white keys, and those spots happen between B and C and E and F. What that means is that if I play this low string E and then I move to the first fret or the first space, now I'm playing the note F, because E to F is one of those exception spots where there's no black key, so there's no E sharp or F flat. However, if I kept going, after F, in between the notes F and G, there is a black key on the piano, and we would call that F sharp or G flat. On guitar, we end up using sharps a lot more than flats, so you'll most commonly hear me refer to this note as F sharp. So that is how we find notes on guitar. We could actually just follow that sequentially. So E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then remember there's no B sharp or C flat, so this next one would be C. So you could actually find any note that you need to. You could start on a different string. So if say I wanted to go Evan always does and start on the D string, then I would go D, D sharp, E, and then remember there's no E sharp, so this would be F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, so on and so forth. So you could actually use your starting pitches to kind of help you figure out where the different notes are on guitar. Okay, so now that we know how to find notes, let's talk about how we actually play them on guitar. And your right hand's going to have a part and your left hand's going to have a part. So let's talk about the left hand first. We're going to number your fingers on your left hand, starting from your index finger. On piano, we would number from the thumb, but your thumb doesn't really do a lot on guitar, and so we actually start with your index finger, and we call number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we do end up using the thumb sometimes, we're not going to leave them out altogether. So we're going to just, if you see like a T, I'll use a T on a chord diagram or something like that to indicate thumb. But most commonly, because your thumb hangs out up here, we're just going to number 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what you're going to do is you're going to play from the tip of the finger. So just like you have tippy toes, you can have tippy fingers. And so what I'm going to do to start is line up my fingers, kind of do the best I can to put one finger on one fret or one lane, and so that my first finger will end up playing strings on the first fret, second finger on the second fret, so on and so forth. So for example, I could go open note, first fret, second fret, third fret. So where I want to put my finger is going to be right up against the metal bar that goes vertically. So we can call this, the metal bars are actually called the frets, and then this is called the fret space, but most often people call the space the fret. So when I say first fret, you're putting your finger in the space, but the fret is actually the metal bar. So where you want to be is right up against the metal bar right here. Not so far that you are on top of it, because then you'll get kind of a muted muffly sound. But if you end up too far back, you're gonna get those tinky buzzy sounds, and we don't want that. So the sweet spot ends up being right about here. And remember, you don't want to use the flat part of your hand, you want to use the tip, the fingertip, right there. And as a spoiler alert, playing guitar in the very beginning, when you have never played before, is hard, and your fingers are gonna hate you. But I promise, if you will stick with it, after a couple weeks, your fingers are gonna toughen up for you, and you're gonna build some calluses on your fingertips, and then playing will be a breeze, I promise. But the first part is hard, so stick with it and get over that big first hill, and then it is smooth sailing from there, I promise. Okay, so that is how you fret a note with the left hand, and then the same thing would go with all the other fingers. So you want to kind of just do the best you can to bend your finger around so that you end up right on the what I call the front of the fret. So this would be the front of the fret, this would be the back of the fret. Back is bad, front is good. Okay? With your right hand, there's multiple ways that you can actually pluck the strings. You can use just your fingers and just kind of pluck it with one finger or your thumb, whatever you want. If you want to use a pick, like so, then what I do is I point my finger like a gun, and then the pick would be kind of like a bullet shooting out this way. And then the other thing is your thumb is going to come around and make a thumbprint right on the top of it like that. So the net result of that, what you end up with, is kind of this little dinosaur tooth. Meow, 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 meow. And so then when you bring your arm back to the guitar, you should have the pick kind of pointed right up at you, with your thumb kind of shooting right down the neck. So that's what you end up with, is the little dinosaur tooth, and the tip of the pick should be kind of pointed right back at you like that. And then you just have to make sure that you are plucking the string of the note, the same note that your left hand has a finger on. Because otherwise, if you are on the wrong string with your right hand, then whatever your left hand is doing is not really going to make a difference, because you're not plucking the right string. So you got to make sure that your right hand and your left hand are on the same page or on the same string, and then you should get a really good sounding note from that point on. And that is going to take some practice, so don't get frustrated if that doesn't happen right away, because it will. Stick with it. Alright, so thank you for watching 1.0. This is the first video in the Stellarbot guitar series. In the next video, we are going to talk about how to put the guitar in tune, and that's a very useful skill as well. In the meantime, what would be the best thing for you to practice is getting good sound out of individual notes using different fingers and different strings. So kind of practice using different fingers in different spots, so that you get used to playing good notes every time. And then when you feel like you have gotten to the point where you're getting good notes, what you can do is you can play along to some of the written songs that I've provided for you down below. And you can just kind of play around with some familiar melodies like Mary Had a Little Lamb, or and you can do those on any string. They're just single string exercises, so I have provided just the fret numbers on one string, so you just got to count your frets, and then have some fun with that, and I'll see you in the next video.